Welcome to the podcast, guys. I'm joined by Shadows. And before we get into today's topic, I'm going to talk about what the podcast is going to be about in general. So, this podcast is going to be about the console competitive community, and we're going to have some guests from time to time to help us break down these topics. Shadows, do you want to talk about what today's topic is going to be?
Yeah, so today we're going to be doing power rankings for the SCL teams in all four leagues. That's going to be EU PS4, NA PS4, um, Xbox EU, and Xbox NA. We're going to be looking at these teams for their first just their play styles. We're going to see how that kind of impacts the meta and if they're fitting in or not. We're also going to look at how the team's been playing in the SCL sets, if they've been winning, if they haven't been. Of course, we're going to also take into account the league they're in. So if one team is in a seemingly more difficult league than another, we're going to factor that in when we're rating these teams. So do you want to get into the number 16 spot?
Yeah, sure. For number 16, I have Team Jellyfish. I think that they're the weakest team in the EU Xbox League, and they haven't really showed a lot of promise. They did take a game off of Hive Central, I believe, this last week, but that's the only set they've taken, and I feel
Mm-hmm.
like the competition in the EU Xbox League isn't even that high. So to be the last place team, I mean, like obviously the top being rival is very high, but like the bottom is just not. And I
Yeah.
being the last place team in the EU Xbox, I'm just gonna put them at number 16.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit there. I'm going to put Mavericks at 16 from EU PS4. Main reason I'm putting them there is because, for one, I think that even though Jellyfish has definitely been struggling, um, and by no means are they, a top team, I think that they do have, to deal with a rival and Daba's disciples, and those teams are both extremely strong. So for them to win games, it's a little bit, I would say, more difficult than overall on the PS4U side of things. So I'm going to put Mavericks there. I think that they have good leadership because they've generally, as a roster, stuck together, for a long time. But unfortunately, they also just need to have success, and they haven't found that yet. For
Right.
15, I'm going
I
to put
I
Jellyfish
can
there.
All right. I can definitely see your point there, but kind of like the same way we have them like reversed here. For number 15, I'm going to put Mavericks because
Mm-hmm.
I think what they have over Jellyfish is that Mavericks has been together a long time, and
Yeah.
Jellyfish, they're making roster changes, from time to
Mm-hmm.
time, and Mavericks kind of like their core has been together for a very long time, and that's why I put them in number
Yeah.
15 because I think even though
Mm-hmm.
that they are the fourth place team on the EU PS4 side of things, I think they have some potential, and they have taken a game, the
Yeah.
same as
That's.
Jellyfish.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point to bring up. I think that with Mavericks, they definitely have, you know, some sort of strong leadership. If they have been struggling pretty heavily and they're not changing things up, I think that if they, I don't know if maybe they need a coach or they need someone to just on the team to steer them in the right direction. But I think that, as a team, what they're doing is definitely like a very good thing. So I do expect that once, they keep continuing to play with each other and maybe they kind of get more ahead of the meta and just learn, to play individually and as a team more, I think that they can definitely go up. And that is a good point about Jellyfish. Having a lot of roster changes and not kind of sticking with people is definitely going to hurt you in the long run. But generally speaking, these two teams are sort of. I think you can argue that they're in some ways interchangeable. So
Right.
I'm gonna move up to 14 here, and I'm
Well,
going
one more.
from.
I do want to
Okay.
add one more
Mm-hmm.
point to that. Is like even though they've stuck, it is kind of a bad thing that they've stuck together this long and haven't seen any
Yeah.
improvement. So that is why they kind of at the bottom of the
Mm-hmm.
rankings with the number 15 slash number 16 spot. So yeah, let's move into
Mm-hmm.
number 14.
Okay. So for number 14, I had the NA PS4 Team Cavalry. The reason why I have this team here is, unfortunately, since relegations, they have not won a game. They've gotten somewhat close this past week against Ebog. Unfortunately, they did not win. They did end up getting swept. I think that this team is on the rise, except it's just a long way for them. They had some roster changes more recently. Their past team didn't really have success either. They've kept most of their core, so I think that's good. But this team's going to need a lot of time before they start seeing some real success in the league.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I also have them at number 14, and you're more familiar with the NAPS4 scene than I am, and you also actually played for this team before. And what
Yeah,
was what was the what was the team environment like? Like, what
yeah.
was it like playing with those players,
So
like
it was a
Quay
little
and
bit,
mid shots?
yeah. It was a little bit different. We had a different mid, and I was playing solo. We had a different EDC as well. I think that from what I remember, the biggest kind of issue for our team, because we played on console and we were like probably the best CC team before the new season, maybe like the second best. We were a strong team, but what happened when we switched over is I feel like a lot of the motivation and the drive kind of just died. We barely made the SCL together. It ended up being like a game 3, which we like had which the enemy team threw in, and then we ended up winning. And I feel like our drive sort of fell apart a little bit. I think that they're starting to get that drive again, but we weren't like screaming consistently, and we weren't, I don't think, really getting anything out of those scrims. There wasn't any like VOD review or anything. We were also just like inexperienced comp players for the most part. I think that also switching controllers to the PS4 definitely hurt this team a lot. I think if this team was able to use Xbox controllers, like if that was possible, I think that they would have a decent amount more success. I also think
Right.
that all their roster changes they've had recently. In this phase, they lost Neximus. I'm not sure why they lost him. I'm assuming he left. He was, in my opinion, the strongest player on that team. And then them losing Neximus was very bad. Even though they were still consistently losing games, they were at least semi-close. And then they also lost Lunatic, who was another big addition. I think Kenny's done a pretty decent job filling his spot, but even then, it's just not enough to find them wins.
Right. And they are
hmm
the fourth ranked team in
Yeah.
the in APS4
Currently
with
sitting 0 and
no
5, I
wins. Is
believe.
that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. All
hmm
right. So you want to move into your number? Who do you have for number 13?
Number 13, I have VGS Gods. Don't have a whole lot of information on these guys. They are on EU PS4. I believe they are the third speed spot, but that might change.
They're actually in a three-way tie for first.
Oh,
So
okay.
technically they could be third, and technically they could be first. But I
That's interesting.
personally,
hmm
personally, I feel like they're the worst of the three-way ties. Like
Yeah,
VGS
yeah.
Gods, Aerial Rise, and I believe
Out
it's
cold.
it's
That's
out
out,
cold,
out
all
cold.
in the three-way tie for first. But I think you're right in saying that they're the third place team because like
hmm
I just feel like they're the weaker of the
Yeah,
three tied teams.
I've watched a decent amount of you PS4 SCL more recently, and I think one thing I have noticed. I don't want to go too much into these teams before we reach them, but I will say that I think the gap between the EU PS4 teams is shrinking, and that's definitely good to make the league more competitive. Last phase, similar to NA PS4, Outcold Gaming sort of just took the league. I don't even know if they dropped a set. They might have dropped a set, but they convincingly made LAN. Now it sort of seems like it's still everyone's game, except for Mavericks. Um, and even then, they still have some potential to make it, though it is
Right.
slim. I think that VGS Gods, while it is the weakest of those three in that three-way tie, I think that they can still make LAN if they, continue to practice together, um, and just stick at it and just
Right.
keep screaming. One
I
issue though I
think
do see, I'm just going to cut you off really quick. One issue
no
I do
problem.
see is all these teams are generally similarly skilled. Some are a little bit better than others, but they're generally, I would say, especially Aerial Arise and VGS Gods, they're generally kind of in the same spot. So there might be an issue with scrimming because I'm not really sure like who these people could scrim, and that might be an issue. They might not really have the people to scrim, just because they're so evenly matched. They probably don't want to give each other their strategies. So it's more. I feel like a lot of this league might be coming up to whoever has like the better strategy to kind of take the other teams by surprise. Because if I was in Ariel Rise's situation or VGS got situation or even Elcold's, I wouldn't want to play any of these other teams during my scrims because I wouldn't want to, leak any information I have for my sets against them later on.
Right. Well, the way I feel about VGS gods, the way I feel about the PS4 EU scene in general is like I feel like that's the weakest of all four leagues. Like, and that's kind of how like I'm ranking all these teams. It's kind of crazy that we have a first place team, like a team that's first place in their league at number 13, and I think that's just like speaks to how we feel the EPS4 league is. I just think that it's like the least. I wouldn't say it's the least competitive because they're definitely competitive in their own region, right?
Yeah.
But they're not. I don't feel like they are competitive outside of that. Like I don't think they'd be competitive with even the PS4 and A side. Like
that's a good point.
Just from watching the games, it feels the most sloppy. Like it doesn't feel like they're working as a team as well as some of the other leagues.
Yeah, so, and I think a big part of that can be chalked up to the fact that I believe there's a lack of just people to really practice against. I feel like when you're on NA, just in general, PS4 or Xbox, you can scrim versus other NA teams. You can, if you have the other console, you can scrim versus the other NA teams. So, like for example, if you're NA PS4, you can play versus NA Xbox people if you have a PC or you have an Xbox. And then some of those NA SCL teams for Xbox, they play minor league teams and they play pro league teams. I highly doubt that's the same case with the EU side of things. So I think EU is just generally at a disadvantage. They can't scrim versus the SPL teams. They can scrim versus the minor league teams, but I don't think that the minor league on EU is probably going to be scrimming any PS4 or even Xbox EU teams. Maybe Rival might be scrim partners with one of them, but they kind of just have like a lack of availability when it comes to scrimming. And I think when there's a lack of people to like play up to, it's kind of hard for them to improve at the same rate everyone else is improving at.
Right. And that brings me into my number 12 pick, actually, which is someone also in that three-way tie, Aerial Rise. Now, I do want to mention that these guys have beat out Cold.
Yeah.
And they're showing a lot of promise, which is why I put them above VGS gods. But then again, it's just like the PS4 EU. All the problems you just mentioned is kind of like why I've ranked them down there. They're that low.
Yeah.
Who do you have?
I also have Aerial Rise. I think that it's just a little bit unfortunate that there's no like SPL kind of scene in a EU obviously anymore because it's all NA centered. So if you're NA, you automatically, I feel like, have an advantage because those minor league teams are playing SPL teams for scrims, like the lower end SPL teams, and then those minor league teams are playing SCL teams.
Right.
So generally speaking, regardless of where you are improving a little bit faster. These EU PS4 teams really don't have too many people to scrim. I don't know what the CC scene is on EU PS4, but I doubt it's very established. Also because, PS4, they got their leagues much later, and when PS4 first came out with Smite, there wasn't like a competitive scene right away. Like on Xbox, you had game battles, you had like, you had these ladder matches, you had Face It, you had CCs. That stuff didn't come to PS4 Smite for like an additional year and a half, so they kind of missed out on that like initial kind of competitive, like practice. And now that they're getting it, I think that eventually in time they'll start to move up the rankings, but right now they're just too behind.
Right, I agree with you. Yeah. I don't want to spend too long on them because it's kind of like the same situation of VGS gods. The next pick I feel like is a little bit controversial. Next pick I have Hive Central, which is like some people might have a big question mark over because it's like they just lost to Jellyfish last week, I believe. 2-0 in 2-0 fashion. We didn't get to see that game, so it kind of makes it harder to
see what happened.
Like all last week's SCL games were not broadcasted due to Labor Day, and it's kind of hard to like know what happened there. But when I look at this roster, it's hard to put them any lower. They have Mango, which there's a lot of hype around.
Yeah,
It's kind of
Mango's
a
strong.
disappointment to see them 1-4,
Mm-hmm.
to be honest. Like Mango was really strong before he. There was a lot of hype around him before he got that SCL ban.
Suspension.
I
Yeah.
don't remember what he got suspended for, but I
It was. It was. I don't remember the exact situation, but I do remember it was like a very controversial suspension. I don't remember the
right.
exact reasoning, but I don't think it deserved the ban he got for as long as he did. I don't remember though the exact situation, so I'm not going to bring it up because I don't want to
What team was
put
he
in
on?
false
Was it
information.
Dabo's Disciples or something like that? Wasn't he
So
on a top team before he
beforehand
got the
he
suspension?
was. It was,
Okay.
but the teams weren't the same. So rival still existed, but Davos Disciples, because that's like a name the players came up with.
Great.
For Dobson, and I don't remember the old teams. It might have been, but it was the second seed EU PS4 or EU Xbox team. He was on that
Right.
team. They were strong. They weren't as good as rival, but they were close enough, I would say, that they could take maps off of them.
It's so the roster is Gnome, Reformed Mango. I have no idea I have no idea how to pronounce that name. Sackwill,
Oh yeah,
um, Hydro GVR and Tiger. Um,
yeah,
a lot of known names on there. It's kind of disappointing
mm-hmm.
to see them at 1-4, but I have them at ranked 11. I don't think they'd
Yeah,
be any higher. If anything, they'd be lower right now just because of
mm-hmm.
their performance. But I have them that high just because I feel like their potential is higher, and
Yeah.
um,
So I also
I could
put,
see them turning it
mm-hmm.
around.
Yeah, I also put Hive there. I think that yeah, like when I look at that roster, in my opinion, at least maybe once upon a time they haven't had success recently. So I'm gonna stand by this anymore. But I felt that Gnome was probably the best solo out of EU Xbox. I just thought that he did more than everyone else in that scene. So it's really disappointing to kind of see them fall now. I don't think I can like keep up with that claim because of the lack of success they've had. But yeah, Mango and Gnome, I feel like they definitely have the carry potential. They're both. I'm not sure if they've played together in the past, but I know they're both individually strong players, and maybe it's a synergy issue. But this team definitely has the names. It's very surprising that they're not. I mean, if I were to look at all these teams and not know their placements, like going into this phase, I would say that this would be the second seeded team, maybe even first,
Right.
um, by a few games, and it's very surprising to see them as low as they are. But maybe
Right.
things will go up for them. I definitely expect them to. Them losing a jellyfish, I wouldn't say it's weird. That's an interesting kind of scenario because it's they I guess they're not held to the same standard they once were at, but I don't think anyone really expected them to lose that set, so that might have been a fluke, but that might also just be that this team is going to continue to kind of go on a downwards descent, and maybe Jellyfish will start, coming up the ranks a little bit more.
Right. So
Mm-hmm.
for number 10, I
Yeah.
have Sanguine. We're
Mm-hmm.
more familiar with this territory of the
Yeah.
NA Xbox. We play against these players in ranked. We've played against them in scrims. I
Mm-hmm.
haven't personally played against Sanguine in scrims, but I've played against some of the
Yeah.
players before in scrims, and I'm kind of
Mm-hmm.
familiar with these players. But something interesting with Sanguine is this last week they beat Fatal 2-0, which in my mind
Yeah.
I still have Fatal above them, so I'm interested. I really wish this last week was broadcasted because it would have made this like power ranking thing a whole lot easier. So I would love to know what happened or what went wrong between them.
Mm-hmm.
The Sanguine and Fatal match, and it's unfortunate that we don't have that information.
Yeah.
Uh, but I do have them at
Mm-hmm.
number 10, and that's like I think that's pretty high for being the last place team
Yeah.
in their region.
Mm-hmm.
I think the NA Xbox region might it's I mean I think it's kind of hard to argue that that's the strongest region.
Yeah.
Um,
I
and
would say it is. Yeah. Um.
and I
Mm-hmm.
think that there's a lot of roster changes here. So like Teep and Sliced taking an exit from the roster, and we got Truancy moving into the mid lane, and
Yep.
Strider Prime into the jungle
And then
with
Dr. L going
Doctor
to
L.
support. Yep.
Right, exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know my personal feelings in this, and if any of you guys are watching this, it's no offense. It's just like this is just opinions. I just feel like Truancy is a better support than
Mm-hmm.
Dr. L, and I feel like Teep was a better mid than Truancy. And I think
Yeah.
Strider Prime is an upgrade. Like I think Strider Prime's doing well. I've always kind of been, I don't want to say a fan, but I've always been a fan of what he's doing. I
Yeah.
thought he was really good. I thought he looked really good on the Fatal Ambition roster, and I played with him in like one of the Ragnarok tournaments, and I thought he was insane.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I think that's like a slight upgrade in the jungle role, and that's probably helping them a lot, and a slight downgrade in the support and mid role. But what do you think?
Yeah. So with Sanguine, I actually put them at number 9, but I'll get into that afterwards.
Yeah,
With this roster, I think that it's one thing I think it struggled with, even though it did take that win, which I did not expect that win to happen. I thought that Fatal had that 2-0. Honestly, unfortunately for Fatal, it was not the case. But Sanguine is not the team it used to be in so many ways. First phase they come in, they look pretty good. They have Wicked in the solo lane. He ends up leaving. I'm not exactly sure what happened there, but then Jacob Tass comes in, so that already I think changed up a little bit of you know the identity of that team. I don't
right.
think Jacob Tess joining when he did really change anything. I think they were still kind of the third seeded team at the time, and I think they were going to stay that way regardless of who their solo was. Um, but what I always remembered from this team is they were like really kind of big on being a team. All these people sort of like they were always playing with each other. They were always hanging out with each other. All 5 of them. So I think a
Yeah, that
roster
was a
change kind of rattled them a little bit for one.
right. That
And
that was like a
yeah,
really good friend squad. Like they were all good friends with each other.
and they were strong too. Yeah,
Yeah, they
and then
were.
a little bit later, second phase comes around, and Teep ends up deciding, to step away. I guess he just didn't really want to play SCL anymore.
I have
And
no
then
idea. I did
yeah, that
the
was
MT.
strange.
I did
I
the MT a couple weeks ago and was like,
mm-hmm.
"Hey, what happened? Why'd you leave?" And he ignored it. So thanks,
Oh
T,
well.
for egoing me, bro.
Hey,
Sick
if we get
ego.
him on here, we'll ask him.
we're definitely gonna get him and
Yeah,
Colin on here
yeah, because that
for an
was
episode.
strange. And then also losing Sliced, I don't think. I think that now that Sliced is kind of not on like a team. Well, he's on a team, but he's not
He's
on
on
the
the
same team he
XCL
was.
team
Yeah, yeah. I think that
with
now that
T
he's not.
as well,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. So it seems like they joined kind of together, to go, do what they wanted to do because they were still like a good group. Um,
Right.
I think though that I would agree now that like Slice isn't in the SCL. I don't think he's been showing kind of the same prowess. Um, but I do think that on saying when he was their win condition, I'm not exactly sure why. I just felt that when we would scrim them, he was kind of the player to look out for. I don't, from what I've seen with other people scrimming against him, that's not really the case. Sliced isn't kind of the guy you ban out or the guy you necessarily worry about more than other people. I felt at the
Right.
time he was. Um, and then BM Bobby still in the ADC role. I think that he's been struggling a
I
little bit more than
I think
usual. He's
I
really
think he's
good.
the weakest out of the four
Yeah.
ADCs, and that's kind of hard.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a close between him and Pin. Like I think they're
Yeah,
competitive with each
it's
other,
close.
and
Mm-hmm.
and like them two are like hands down the worst two of the
Mm-hmm.
four. And
Yeah.
that's no shots to them. I mean, it's Ghost and Krim, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
two really like world champions. So I mean,
Yeah.
uh, it's kind of hard to wait. Is Ghost a champion? I don't know. Yeah, he is. He is. He won mid. No, he did he?
He
Wait,
won
I
like
don't
a
think.
LAN. I don't think he won a. He definitely
Yeah, I
didn't
don't
win a.
think it. Well,
He won
regardless,
some
they've
sort of
been
LAN.
both on like those top
Mm-hmm.
teams for a very long
Yeah,
time, and
yeah,
it's kind of argue.
absolutely.
It's kind of hard to
Mm-hmm.
argue that there. And I do think that be it Bobby, like I would have picked when because Pin with this whole Fatal Ambition roster, they were like the last place team for a very
Yeah.
long time, and with these changes, they've ever since they got Strider Prime last year, that's when they kind of like turned down around their season. And
Yeah.
I would have picked B and Bobby to be the better carry, but like so far I've seen
Yeah, they're not
Pin
having
get
the
the better of him.
success. Yeah.
Yeah,
That was surprising to me. I feel like BM Bobby has a lot of potential. I've seen him, I used to play with him a long time ago. I know this guy's really good. He just, maybe it's the meta. I think that might kind of hurt him a little bit. Because a lot of pressures put onto him, for one, because he's getting all this
Right.
solo farm. And then also he's not like, I always look at Bobby as like the most kind of typical hunter player, and that's not really the meta. There's like a lot of Hells, Hebo, stuff like that.
Right.
That's not his play style. So I
That
think
is
that's
true.
hurting a
That
little bit. Yeah.
this is not his meta at all. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and
I think,
and I do
yeah.
love being Bobby, and I don't think there might be like one person that plays in like the XCL that could take his spot, but
Well, yeah, like
I feel like the
Griffin, but
four,
yeah.
yeah, well, okay, well, obviously we're not
Besides
counting
Griffin.
Griffin
Yeah.
because Griffin is better than like most of the carriers, but like,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think that like there's not many people that could take his spot. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think
He's still
he
really
belongs there.
strong. It's just he's in a bad spot in the meta
Right.
right now, in my
And
opinion.
maybe the meta will switch up and prefer him, but I want to go into number 9 here. Which wait, actually, you
Mm-hmm.
never did say who you had for number 10. Now that I think
So
about it,
number
who do
10,
you
I had
have?
Out Cold.
Out Cold. Okay, that's who I have for
And
number 9.
yeah,
Actually,
the reason why I put Out Cold in number 10 is I feel like Out Cold hasn't. Well, no, Out Cold hasn't been the dominant team they were last phase. They've definitely looked, still strong. They're still, the top team.
right.
They are in the tie, but they are technically the top team. Um, but if I'm going to be honest, I didn't think they would drop a set. So to me, I think, that I can either speak one or two things. I can speak either that Out Cold is a weaker team now, or that the other teams are better. And I think it's a combination of both. I know this team is definitely strong. They ended up losing their coach right after the first phase due to some drama or whatever. Maybe
Yeah,
that's
that was
why they
like with
haven't been.
the
Yeah,
whole like. Oh, that was funny. Well,
yeah.
it was not
I
really
don't think we
funny,
should
but
go into
like
it, but yeah,
this
yeah.
code it's
It was
controversial. I should say
interesting.
it's funny, but like I don't know. That
It
was
was a
the
mess.
whole
It was a
coach
mess. I
thing.
didn't
Like the
really understand what was going
coach
on.
saying that they agreed to pay him a percent and stuff like this. I don't
Hmm.
know how many coaches are in them. Are in the
Yeah, I don't know. That's
Are
something
getting paid
that's worked
percent in
out.
the league. I didn't
That's
expect
worked out
that.
between teams. I guess it really depends because a lot of teams just kind of have a coach as like hey, you're a good friend of ours. If we go to LAN,
Yeah,
but
and
then
I think
so you
that's
have
an
some
issue.
teams.
I do think
Yeah,
that's an issue because it's
it is.
like we can pick out maybe like what a few coaches that actually we feel like
Hmm.
make an impact on
I
the
think
team,
there's
like
like
being
three that I know of, maybe four, maybe four.
visions, maybe Prof. We don't know a whole lot about Prof. He's not really
Yeah.
ever talked about. Um,
Koja Fox on Nemesis, and then I believe Rival has one. I'm not familiar with the person's name, but
right. You
at
would
least I
imagine that
remember
team
from
is doing
last
something
LAN.
with their coach.
Last LAN, I remember that the guy on Rival seemed to know his stuff. I don't know you know, if
But
that's
when you're
changed, if
looking at
there's
like
someone else.
all these lower seeded teams, like none of them have like
Yeah,
notable coaches that we feel like I mean not that I know of that are doing like much for their team. And I
yeah. I mean,
think that
it's
I mean
definitely
it's
not all on
obviously
the
if like you
coach,
want people to
but
do
it's
like a
important.
professional
Yeah.
position for free, or just a trip to land. And if you're a bottom team, you're not going to land.
Yeah,
And I'm just
yeah.
and a lot of these teams are paying their coaches. Don't get me wrong.
Hmm.
I know that, but
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
mean, yeah,
Just
an issue is a lot of teams just don't have coaches. My team included. Like we kind of have like we have subs who will like play, but they're not coaches. I think that some players kind of take it on themselves to do some of the work, but it's a little
right.
bit difficult because there's very few people I know, just in general in the comp scene, who are like objective enough to look at everything they've done wrong and everything everyone else has done wrong and kind of convey it in a way where it's not like biased or it's not going to cause an issue. Um,
Right.
so yeah, I think Out Cold, being at number 10, um, they're not, as strong as they used to be. I think
I think they do
partially.
have a new coach though. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
they talked about that when they dropped their coach. Um,
Mhm.
but I agree with you. I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
Well, I don't agree with you that they're number 10. I think they're number 9. We're around the
Yeah. No,
same
but like,
area, and it's
yeah.
kind of hard for me to put them below Sanguine just because it's like they're tied for first in their region.
Mhm.
They went to land. They have land experience now, and it's
Yeah.
kind of hard to like put
Mhm.
like the first place below
Yeah.
below a fourth place. And I can see your points because it is a weaker region, and they were at their high last season, were like barely losing any sets, and now they're dropping to aerial rise. They're 3-2. They're tied in a three-way tie for first. So it's like they're a three-way tie for first in what we consider in the weaker region. So that's kind of like why they're down there.
Mhm.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's definitely something to look at. Again, they're falling into the same trap as the other UPS4 teams. Probably don't have as much practice. Another thing I noticed just from watching their sets, um, this team they all have like these are strong players, like especially Fatality, and their jungler Gunter, and even Justline in mid. Those people I know off the top of my head. The other
right,
two people, I've seen on other teams and stuff, but those three I feel like are the most standout. And I think that like when I think of Fatality, when I watch him play, I think of like Achilles and Guan Yu stuff. Like there's certain gods that just kind of associate with him. And in the first phase, those gods were a lot more, I would say, like prioritized, a lot more dominant. Achilles obviously was an extremely strong pick. I think it's still you can still play it and still have a lot of success with it, but his characters aren't really the strongest anymore.
right.
And they're even I mean I could you could even say that Achilles and Guan Yu are a little bit weaker right now. I think they're in an okay spot, but they're not like those are like his two best gods, I would say, from what I've seen, and they're not as like good as they used to be in this
Right.
meta.
The meta has shifted a lot.
Yeah.
Um, Going into the number 8 pick, I don't have anything more to
Hmm.
add unless you have something to add. I don't have anything more to
No.
add.
No.
Um, Going into the number 8 pick, I have E Boys Gone Wild. I don't
Hmm.
know a lot about this team if I'm being 100% honest. This is just where I feel like from their standings they would be.
Yeah.
You're very familiar with these teams because you played them,
Hmm.
so kind of
Okay.
do you have them in number 8 or where do
Yeah,
you
I
have
do
them?
have them at number 8.
Okay, then I'll let
Main
you explain that.
reasoning. Yeah. So the thing with this team is there isn't. It's a strong team. They have mechanical talent, but I feel like the only reason this team is even as high as it is because of one player on their team, and that's their mid laner Nano Adaption. I am willing to argue that this is the second best mid laner on all four consoles. Um, Maybe third. I think top four regardless. That's just my opinion. But at least on the NA side of things, I would say he's below Baronic, maybe below Keeksmate, and that's it. This guy is so good. But the issue is he can only do so much by himself. I think the other people on his team are strong. I think that him and Zen have impressed me the most. But they had a roster change. They dropped relating. Spartan went to jungle from solo. They picked up a CC solo laner from PS4, who I haven't had the opportunity to play against yet. Um, he doesn't look bad. He looks okay, but he's not Nano. He's not Zen. And their support too. I mean, he's a support. He's consistent, but I don't think he's made any like flashy plays. Not that he needs to, but they're not winning all their games. So I think it might be important to see something a little bit more out of him. That's Volti. Um, but generally speaking, I think that what a lot of teams have figured out, at least on the PS4 side of things, I don't know how their scrims go, but it's if you can take down Nano, the whole team kind of crumbles because he's
Right.
sort of what's keeping that team together. And I think that if Nano had a stronger roster to surround himself with, this team would definitely go a lot higher. But there's just a lot of inconsistencies. Their teams as a whole, I wouldn't say has any consistent players. Nano is consistently strong, like I said. Zen, I think, as well. Everyone else, not so much.
So it's really just became like the strategy for beating that team is
Yeah,
camp
yeah, it's
Nano.
it's sort of known
Yeah.
because you look at other teams like Hype Unit, let's just say for example. Every lane has somebody where it's like I need to put this guy down or this guy's
Yeah.
going to be a threat late game. That's not really
Right.
the case with this team. I mean, obviously these people are all in the SCL, so they have talent, but it's not like it's not equal. And when everybody kind of knows who the best player is, and that team falls apart without that player on the map, it's very easy to just kind of say, let's ban this stuff to take it away from him. Let's make sure to play for killing him, and then everything else is just going to fall into place. That's what I've seen
Right.
happen. I think that if Nano isn't put under the pressure and he gets certain, picks that he's excelled with, I think primarily his most like his strongest character has been Hebo. He would play that in ADC basically and just become a raid boss and then do whatever he wants. later on in the game. I think if he gets certain selections like that or the ISIS, he can carry a game against, I would say, basically any team in PS4. Yeah, I would say any team in PS4. So it's just all kind of revolving around Nano and Zen too, a little bit. And it's just like they can't do all of it. You know what I mean? They just can't do all of it. So they're
Right.
still a
I
strong team, but they're
100%
going to be
agree.
number 8 for that.
All
Yeah.
right. So number 7, I have one of my favorite teams in the league, Fatal Ambition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Soul Reaper. You got J Pro. Who else is on the roster? Oh, Pin, Mr.
Pitbull.
TGV, and Pitbull. Oh
Yeah.
God, I like Pitbull. Pitbull's a frag machine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, yeah, I have them at number 7 because I just feel like they're the third best team in the in a uh Xbox region, and I think that they're like definitively third. Like I don't think they're better than Blanche. I don't think they're better than Hype, although they can take games off of them. I 100%
Mm-hmm.
believe they could take games off of Blanche Fan Club. And at one point, this team was like the definitive
Yeah.
fourth place
Mm-hmm.
team. So
They
this
they
is an
did
improvement.
they did take a victory off of Blanche, but I do think it's important to know that Hamster was playing in the jungle. Jengaru couldn't play that week for whatever reason, and they had Rockstar playing support. And
Okay,
Hamster's their shot caller, from not maybe not their shot caller, but he's like their playmaker. I feel like, and when he's
yeah,
put in jungle, and then they have a support player who doesn't actually play support, it kind of messes everything up. But even then, they're still a very
right,
strong team. I just don't. They're not. They're not Blanche, but yeah, I put them at
right.
number 6. So actually, not above your spot. And I think the
Yeah, yeah.
reasoning is this team is really strong, and them being at third seed is a little bit um, misinforming because the only reason I feel like this team is third seed is because it's Blanche and Hype that they have to beat to get any higher, and that's
Right.
very like that's very
I
difficult for
actually
them
don't
to
know if
do.
they're third seed right now, but I just like that's where I have them. Like I think
The,
they're the third
I
team.
believe they are
Are
third
they
seed
third
because
seed? Okay.
Blanche took the victory off of Hype, so I
And
highly doubt
yeah,
that.
and
Yeah,
Fatal Ambition lost this week, so they should be third.
yeah, that 100%.
Yeah.
So yeah, super strong team. I think I don't want to chalk this all up to the jungle selection, like the switch, but
The J Pro switch.
yeah, this team did start doing a lot better with J Pro. I don't know if that's all on J
I
Pro or
think
maybe Strider was causing problems. I don't want to put this all on Strider though. I think as a team though, they've looked better with J Pro, and I think that's important. I think Pitbull has been consistently one of the best solos in the league, super strong. Um, Probably the scariest Odin besides Wolves. Um, his god pool is a little bit weird. I don't think his god pool is as big as any of the other solos, but on the characters he can play, if he's in a good matchup, he's going to carry the game most times.
I feel like
Um,
the weakest player on this Fatal Ambition roster is Mr. TGV.
yeah,
I
I can
think,
agree with
and
that.
I don't think that's
Hmm.
all up to do with mechanics, but I do think his mechanics are kind of poor. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, who am I to talk? But like, this is just
Hmm.
like my opinion.
Yeah.
Um, I think that, and I also have some like inside info because I do have a friend who used to play with TGV and
I
Pin.
used to team with
Um,
TGV a long time ago. Yeah.
Well, like I don't know if you know what it's like, but like
Hmm.
TGV and Penn like know each other in real life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
from I don't know if it's changed, but from what the person that teamed with them before said to me was that they argue constantly. Like they know each other in real life
Yeah.
and they just
Hmm.
argue a lot. And that's
That sounds
not a good
like it.
team environment for anyone. And like
Hmm.
I remember NoHo like when they were like before they made the pro league when NoHo Solo was their mid laner, he like left it. It was like so toxic between them at one point. NoHo Solo
Yeah.
like ended up leaving the team and joining back later.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
so I subbed for this team a decent amount when they had Strider, phase one. Um,
right.
and because Pitbull, he has like a dodgy schedule. I'm not sure if he still does, but at least at the time he did. So I subbed for them like a decent amount, probably 5-6 times. Um, and
Yo.
yeah, the thing that I
The,
kind of got from them the most
yeah.
is Penn has his own idea of playing the game. TGV has a different one, and then Soul Reaper and Strider. I don't know how Pitt is obviously because I was subbing for him, and I don't know how J Pro is either. With that, but they kind of like everyone kind of follows TGV with his
Right.
ideas, and then Penn is sort of in his own kind of world. I think that because they have been finding some victories, I feel like that gap is closing a little bit. But even though there's two people, I do know they definitely have different ideas. I think that as a team, their synergy is pretty strong at this point. They've been playing with Soul Reaper for a long time now. Not They haven't been playing with J-Pro for a while, but I think Soul Reaper and
Right.
J-Pro have played before a decent amount, and then Pitbull obviously has been there for a long time as well.
Well,
So this team's getting a lot of things
when
going.
the original roster of that like made SCL, it was J Pro
Hmm.
and Soul Reaper on it.
Oh
It was
yeah, you're right.
back when it was
Yeah, I
Forged or
forgot about
Vulcan. So
that.
they did make SCL together before, but
Yeah.
I do want to say though the reason why I kind of laughed there when you were talking about Pitbull's schedule is because like did you see the meme that
Oh
their
yeah, I
team was
did.
posting around with like
So I
Pitbull's
guess it didn't get
ridiculous
better. Yeah,
the
yeah, I guess it
Pitbull's
didn't get better. Hmm.
ridiculous excuses on why he can't make scrims had me dying, dude.
Yeah, I think they usually almost always have a scrim or a sub for their scrims from what I've seen in the solo lane. I don't know if that's necessarily hurting them. I mean, it's definitely hurting them, but
Right.
I'm more surprised it's not hurting them. I feel like it should hurt them more, um, because they haven't really been playing, and Pitbull definitely does not play a whole lot. But I guess
Yeah.
that because the meta is so kind of free right now in solo, you can sort of do what you want to do, and there
Right.
isn't a whole
I
lot
feel
of
like
punish. You can kind of get away with not playing as much because you can
I feel
just do
like
what you want.
if you have to have a sub in any role,
Solo is
like
probably the best one.
probably
Yeah,
solo is the best one to have a sub in
yeah, it
because it's
is.
like
It is.
and it's they all do the same thing. Like as
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah,
shitty
some
as that
some
sounds,
offer
that's
certain things, but from what I know from Pitbull, he doesn't talk a whole lot. Most solos don't. He's not like a shot calling kind of guy. So
yeah.
him not being there for scrims probably doesn't change up too much.
There is
Maybe like the god pools, but that's just about it.
there's one more thing I want to touch on Fatal Ambition
Hmm.
before we move on, but I actually forgot it, so we're we're just gonna move
Yeah.
on anyway.
Okay. So yeah, I had Fatal at number 6. I had Dabo's Disciples at
Oh yeah.
7.
Oh, Double's Disciples, other half of
Yeah.
Rival, right?
Hmm.
Or Vaporish
So
Coast anyway.
yeah.
And wait, was
So
Dobson on Rival, the original Rival too, or no?
um,
I
I
don't know.
actually he might have been. I'm not sure.
I
There
don't know.
was there was something weird that happened with that. But yeah, Daba's Disciples, they have Vaporish Coast, they have Dobson. Those are in my eyes best two players on that team. Um, but I don't think I think the reason why I put them number 6 and not higher, I don't think that I'm not exactly sure why, but like the Vaporish Coast, I remember I didn't watch a whole lot of SCL when he was on Enix and when he was on Rival from the EU side of things. Um,
Yeah.
but when he would go to LAN, he would always pop off. Even when they lost, he was, in my eyes, the best player on his team besides
Right.
Fly when on the Rival days.
Yeah.
Um, and
Vaporish Coast. Is that what
yeah,
you're talking
yeah.
about? Yeah,
Hmm.
the Penta
And I
Kid. That's what they
think
used
that,
to call
yeah,
him, right?
yeah, exactly. And I just don't think, like, from the last that I saw, I think Predator streamed Predators from Rival. He streamed their set versus Dabo's Disciples, and I believe they won 2-1. And I don't know, Vaporish wasn't like the guy. You know what I mean? He wasn't
Right.
like he was doing his job, but he wasn't kind of spearheading the team towards
You're
those
right. I
victories.
think it's like a lot harder from the ADC role when you don't have like
Yeah.
the team
Mm-hmm.
surrounding you because it's like if you don't have a good front line or a good like setup around you or like, it's kind of hard to and a lot of the times it's like ADC plays this kind of cleanup role. I don't know. I wouldn't say
Yeah,
cleanup role
yeah.
actually,
No, I
but
know what you
like
mean.
and it's
It's
kind of hard to do
surprising.
that well when your
Yeah.
team is like and I don't know how well this like new meta of like the the mages and
Mm-hmm.
the mages and the carry lane is fitting him and I
Yeah, I don't
do
think it's
think
fitting
he's
too
still like
well.
if you
Mm-hmm.
ask me he's the best ADC in EU Xbox and I think it's
I can
hard to
agree with
argue
that
that he's got
still.
more
Yeah. Yeah.
he's got more victories than any other ADC like um
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think I'm a fan of what Dobson's doing over there. I'm a fan of what Vaporish Coast is doing over there. I'm just not a fan of what the rest of the team is doing over there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Uh,
think that. Well, because I think it's interesting because I would say season 5 too, like tail end of season 4, beginning of season 5. You could argue that Coast was probably the best ADC across all consoles at the time. He outshined Griffin for a bit. and then he outshined Covey. Obviously, he was like at his prime at that point. He did really well against a bunch of all the ADCs like Zaxi and stuff during like the console wars at the end of season 4. That's when he actually got that Uller Penta and that he kind of got that name.
Yeah.
But I think and I think it's interesting because season 4 at the end of there, that was sort of it was a similar meta for ADCs besides the picks. It was you would put your hunter there, and he would just solo farm. He would rotate really ahead of everyone else, and he would just do his thing. And that's the same meta, sort of. The ADC is getting the solo farm, but I don't think that the team is playing around him like they used to on Rival. And that's a problem because he's getting the most farm for one, so they should already play around him. And he's not. And he's like, in my opinion, he's their best player. He is probably the best ADC on EU. And I think they need to just kind of play around him more. And they should find more victories, and I think they can take down Rival if they make that adjustment.
Right. And just before we go any further with them, I do have them at the number 6 spot. So like you have them at the number 7, I have them at the number 6, and then you have Fatal Ambition at number 6. And just for me, it's kind of hard to put Fatal Ambition above Dauble's Disciples. They're like definitively like the second place team, and I think they're like, I think they're good.
They have potential.
Like they have good players, and
still, it's not over yet.
I feel like if Fatal Ambition and Dauble's Disciples were to match up, I think Dauble's Disciples would actually take that game. I think that Vaporish Coast would put Pin in his place, but that's just me.
That's See, I'm not sure.
Right, we haven't seen how like that. EU players match up against NA a lot, like other than LAN between Hype Unit and Rival. And that's really like the only matchup we've got to see a lot of. And
the reason I would say Fatal Ambition would take that, I think like let's say they played a best of 5, I think they would take it at like 3-1 or 3-2. Reason being is same thing with EU PS4. These teams have a limited amount of people they can scrim. Maybe Dabo scrims minor league teams, but if they don't, or even if they do, those minor league teams don't have practice versus SPL teams, so they're still in their own kind of bubble. Again, if you're on NA, you have an automatic advantage. You can scrim the minor, play the SPL teams. So you're still, the SPL teams are better than all these teams, right? So, except, well, actually, maybe not Hype Unit. Some of the lower end ones could beat some SPL teams. But that's a different topic. I think that any kind of team in EU is a little bit disadvantaged because of that issue with they can't, scrim as many people.
Right. All right. So let's go on to number 5 then. I have Nemesis.
I do too. Yeah.
They were the number 1 team on PS4 NA.
Yeah.
They're still like in the running for that, and they're like second place, right?
They're tied second with E-Boys.
And only below your team. Recently lost this last week to your team. I would love to watch that. So what kind of went on in that game?
So if I'm gonna be honest, we did not go into that set expecting to win. We hadn't had the most scrims more recently. We were struggling even in those scrims. Everything was just kind of going bad. I found out later from a tweet Jarman made that they were like doing really well in scrims, and them losing was kind of surprising to them. And this was really interesting to me because I think once upon a time you could probably put this team at number 3 or number 4, but to put them at 5 is a little bit weird. And we played them. Game 1 was, I believe, like 38 minutes long.
Right.
There was a point in the game where we were like 15-4, so we had the kills. We were winning every fight. But we kept, we lost a Gold Fury, we lost a Fire Giant from it getting stolen, you know what I mean? So we were getting the kills, but the objectives weren't going to us, so we didn't really have a lead, and we ended up, winning off of a very poor Phoenix siege by them. And we just ran it down mid, and then won the game. And then game 2, we won in 22 minutes. It was one-sided the entire way through. We had Potato, who was subbing in support, just run a jump up and take him down.
That's kind of crazy. You beat the previous number 1 team with a substitute. And there is
Mm-hmm.
something more I want to talk about with this Nemesis roster is like
Yeah.
their scrim culture, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
From what you've told me before, like they don't scrim PS4 teams at all, do
They
they?
don't know. Yeah, that's so on
It's kind of
old
like
big money
cocky on
first
their
phase.
part. I don't like that.
Yeah. They literally would not. Well, I think it's a little bit also on both ends. Like they wouldn't ever scrim us, but to be fair, we rarely offered because again we felt like we were competing with them, so we didn't want to leak much
Right.
between them. But I think like a big kind of that's definitely like a little bit of cockiness from them.
I
We
just changed
we
it up.
yeah
Like you had to process it for a minute, and you're like, yeah, it kind of is what
yeah
it is.
no it is
I
it
mean,
is and
it's
I'm
kind of
not gonna
like
lie, it felt really good to win. But
right.
I think a big part of why we won in the way we did is what we heard from other people teaming with some of those players on that team is we heard that Jumpa and Koi's can kind of like shut down and kind of mess up the comms a little bit if they get
Mhm.
tilted or something. So that's why game 2 we threw Potato on the Erlong and we said go kill him at level 1 or go piss him
Get
off.
him tilted.
That was
Yeah.
that was the idea, and then
There's like a
it
lot of
worked.
players
It
that
worked.
strategy works against, just like getting
Yeah,
him
I mean
tilted.
he still plays strong, but I feel like internally that sort of screwed things up. I mean, I'm not sure, obviously, because I wasn't, in their comms, but that's the approach we took, and it ended up working out for us.
It's kind of like
So,
a worry situation where like
hmm
during one of the XCL qualifiers, like back in the day, I
yeah,
remember like Coils was on stream and he was like, "Let's just tilt Worry and then we just win for free,"
yep,
and that's what they did. And
hmm
then like his whole team was pissed about that whole situation, and I believe like they broke up
yeah,
after that or something,
hmm
or
yeah.
maybe they didn't. I don't really
So there
remember.
was a controversial thing that happened recently with this team. Covey leaving the squad. Um, it's disputed a little bit if he actually chose to leave or if he got dropped. He
Right.
claimed that he chose to leave, but I think from the tweet, it's possible to interpret that because he said something along the lines of finally like moving on from Smite, and I'm glad to move on and whatever he does, wish him the best. But
Hmm.
it could have been taken that he got dropped because after the week before they had just lost to E-Boys Gone Wild, and then that change just was like suddenly made. I think that was a little bit
Right.
strange for him to just supposedly quit after losing a set. I don't think, especially since they were still the top team at the time, they were tied for first place. I think that was very strange. And then Coils coming in. If you were to ask anybody, I think beforehand, this Coils pickup would have been like the scariest thing because I think it was generally kind of believed that Covey was struggling on this team. He was probably the weakest player. I mean, you have Zaxi and ADC, who's consistently, one of the best. Jarman, who, has been like a veteran in the console scene, since the beginning. Jumpa, who was a World's MVP season 4, still a strong player, to this day. And then
One of the top junglers for sure.
Which also, I think Koiz has been struggling too, but he's had a lot of success. You know, he was on
Coils?
Flashpoint season 5. No, Matt Koiz.
Oh,
Matt Koiz.
okay. I was like, I
Um,
didn't know they brought coils on.
yeah, so they ended up
Yeah.
picking up Coils, and everyone thought, and I thought too, that this was going to be like a really big deal. But honestly, I don't think that the team has gotten better. If anything, they've gotten worse, and I think everyone expected them to get better off that change. So that was
Right.
definitely very surprising to see that not happen. Maybe Covey, because like we scrimmed against Covey, and I mean, no disrespect to him, but he was definitely not the star player of that team. Um, but it's either
Right.
Coils isn't doing as much as he's projected to do, or maybe Covey was bringing something more
And
to the
we
comms and more to the team that
and then we are kind
isn't
of
there
being
anymore.
like negative about every team like we've talked. It's kind of
Yeah,
like
these are still very strong
yeah,
teams, though. It's
like every
just,
team like we've
yeah.
mentioned like more than likely belongs to be in the
Yeah,
SCL.
I think
Um,
that every
and like
team
Nemesis is a strong
belongs.
team. Like
Yeah.
Jump is a really good, and all those are like strong players. The only reason why we're like kind of like talking down about them is because they're not performing as to where expected. All of these
hmm
teams are really not performing to where they want to be, and it's kind of like we're just
Yeah,
kind
I
of
think that
break down like
any team
yeah,
that isn't number one wants to be number one, right? And even
Right.
then, I think that, I mean, you can look at it like if, the top SPL team makes, a mistake, they're going to want to, improve from that mistake. So I think it's good to look at least, like, even if it's a strong team, look at the mistakes they have and why they're not number one so they can
Right.
actually work on that. Because at the end of the day, like, everyone's getting better. So if you're the best team and you don't play, you're not going to be the best team forever.
Right.
It's just
Looking
not going to
back at
happen.
like the last ones we did, I kind of wish we did kind of like go into what they're doing right, and a
Yeah,
lot of these teams
yeah.
are doing some
Hmm.
things right, and we kind of
They
like
are.
now that I think
Hmm.
about it, we did not like we did not
Yeah.
going into that, but like just keep in mind that we are just touching on the negatives because it's just like that's kind of that's kind of why
Hmm.
they're not higher. That's kind of we're just explaining on
Yeah.
why they're not higher than they are. But I
Hmm.
do want to go ahead and move into
Yeah.
to number four, which I originally had rival, but I'm gonna change that now because now that I've kind of like processed it in my brain, I
Hmm.
want to put like big money esports at number four, and
Hmm.
you're on that team.
Yeah.
It's who's on your roster?
So we've got I'm Privative in mid. He is the captain. I'm playing solo, obviously. We have Jellyno in the jungle. His name before was like James Brown or something. He didn't play in the first phase. But he was like a big kind of CC kind of like underground player. He played actually he might have played in the first phase a little bit, but he didn't like consistently play on an SCL team, if he did at all. And then we have Bodilla in the support role, and Axiom Speed in ADC, and yeah.
Actually,
Uh,
speed is nasty, dude,
mm-hmm.
and you're nasty as well, of course. But
Thanks.
uh, number the reason why I got you guys in number four is because obviously the fact that you guys are in number four is kind of like what the hell anyway. Like this
Yeah.
team,
No.
not
Yeah.
like
No.
no
I
one would have
100% understand.
expected that like four because you have four PS4
Yeah.
natives on your
These
team.
these are
I'm
all.
pretty
Mm-hmm.
sure like this is the first team that's at the top of the standings that has four PS4 natives. Like most
Yeah.
teams that have been at the top of
Mm-hmm.
the PS4 and A scene are like you know two or three Xbox players or four
Mm-hmm.
Xbox players and one PS4 native. It's mostly ran by Xbox natives, and this
Mm-hmm.
is like the first time I'm seeing a PS4, mainly PS4 native.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you're an Xbox native.
Yeah. That's.
Team rise
Mm-hmm.
up and
That's
be at the top of
interesting
the.
too. Yeah, I never really
And
thought about that. I mean, there were times like where an all PS4 team would beat like an all Xbox team or something, or maybe they would even be the top, but it never really stuck. Like I think first week of like the first PS4 SCL, it was like a PS4 team on top for like maybe the first week, and then they just started losing. You know what I mean? So that's definitely interesting. Yeah.
obviously, you guys are
Mhm.
you guys are 4-1 right now.
Mhm.
Uh, I put you guys like one position above Nemesis, and some people might be like, they might be below Nemesis because it has only been like you guys only beat Nemesis one time now, right? Or did you
Mhm.
beat them in?
Yeah. No,
And
we beat them one time.
I
So
just
we Big
I
Money
just think it says a
lost to
lot. Like I feel
Nemesis
like
once. Yeah, but it was a different roster. So Conviction was in ADC. Now there's Axiom. You had Xerxes in support. Now there's Bodilla. Panda Mid was playing mid, and Privet was playing jungle. And then
oh
you had
Jesus, this roster's changed a
who was
lot.
the solo? You had Waddle in solo. Yeah, so it's been a complete change. I think you can ask Privative. He was not the jungler. Like he was just not a jungler. He was in that role
Right.
because he had to be, because like there wasn't any other jungler really for him to play mid with, and he had to play the role. He had some decent games, but he wasn't the strongest. And then I think just in general, the team's just gotten a lot better since that roster. Because that was in
Right.
the first week
And
they lost to Nemesis, so I wasn't even part of that.
right. So I do have you guys above Nemesis for that, for the reason like you
Hmm.
guys just beat them. You guys are on the uprise, and Nemesis is kind of on the downfall. It seems like.
Hmm. Yeah, I think Nemesis has
I'm
the
excited to see if you
potential,
can
but
like hold this number one spot if you can
hmm
continue to be because like PS4 and A is kind of if it's
it's
kind
a
of
toss up
competitive right
still.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like E boys are competitive. They're 3-2. Like they have everyone has a positive record
except for
besides
Benedict's.
Benedict's who haven't won a game. So like
Yeah.
you kind of I know like your next week you're going into Benedict's and I'm expecting a
Hmm.
W there. If you lose that one, then like you're going
Yeah,
down on the
that
power
that would be
ranking.
unfortunate. Yeah.
Um,
I can actually mention that. I think that one good thing about the PS4 scene right now is there's no free set. I know Benedict's is 0-5, but again, they almost beat E-Boys Gone Wild Game 1, and even though that team is not strong right now, they can still do something. You know what I mean? It's a best of
Right.
3. You can cheese win a game 1, and then you can have a comeback game 2. Let's just
You
say, like,
have
for
you have
example,
good very
and
good
then
players
that's
on that
it.
team.
Yeah.
Mitch Odds, he's talented, and there's no denying
hmm
that. I wish he would step up and be more of a leader for that team, but that's just not who he is,
Yeah.
in my
He
opinion.
also
Uh,
just, I think, needs different teammates, to be honest.
yeah,
But
and
you know,
I like
yeah.
what Quay used to be my personal coach for 2
hmm
days or something like that. He helped in the 2 days.
yeah.
He watched
No,
me
they're smart
scrim
players. Yeah.
and he sent me a full notebook of notes on what I should be doing better. And I could tell that he was really smart and he knew what he's talking about. And I like
hmm
what he's got going on. I just think this. I don't know why I went
Yeah.
back to that, but I agree with you 100% that in a PS4 side is very competitive, and I do agree with that.
hmm
And the reason, I kind of, I'm gonna. Who do you have at number 5? Actually, let's
Okay,
probably get
so
into that.
well, no, you
Or
meant
number
number
4.
4. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have Rival. I think just for the record, whenever you're on a team that's being mentioned, you're always going to put yourself a little bit higher than most people, and that's really just because, you kind of need to be
You
confident
know
in
what you know
yourself and
what
your
your
team.
best is. You know
Yeah,
what your
yeah.
best is, and at
hmm
every team when you're a fourth place team and you're looking at the first place team and you have scrimmed that team and you've taken games off that team, right? You're always
hmm
thinking well, that's what we are when we play to our best
Yeah.
of our potential, right? If we can
hmm
play at our best all the time, we can beat that team, and that's kind of
Yeah.
how every team that
Exactly.
you're supposed to be on, you're supposed to look at things that when you're
hmm
in the lowest
And
thing.
yeah, that's
Obviously,
why I mentioned that Cavalry. That and even any of these teams, from any of these consoles, they're in the league for a reason. I think that on a certain given day, sometimes a team has a bad day and another team has a really good day, and that happened once when it was like Astral Authority versus Rival at the console finals, and Astral just destroyed Rival because
so
Rival
who
was
did you
having a
put in
bad
number
day. And
4?
yeah, so I put
Sorry, I didn't mean
Rival at
to
number
cut you
4.
off there.
Yeah, yeah, no, but
Oh,
yeah.
so you put Rival
So I
number
yeah I
4.
put
Okay,
Rival at number 4.
bro. Well,
So
that was
here's
looking.
why.
All
Yeah,
right, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
here's why I'll say it. So Rival again, being an EU team, don't always have the scrim availability. I would be extremely surprised though if they weren't scrimming a minor league team like consistently or a few minor league teams consistently. But even then, I think they have that disadvantage. In the league, I also don't think that they do have competitive games with Dabo's Disciples, but they don't really have competitive games with other people. They don't really have. I feel like they're not getting as much practice. Also, I did
I
see. Yeah, I saw Rival play. They
I'm
weren't.
curious on what you
Yeah,
mean when you say that they haven't had they haven't been competitive outside of
yeah.
Dablo's
So,
Disciples because we've only seen
hmm
one land set and it was against an SML team and it's kind of known now
hmm
we've seen what hype unit is like in
yeah,
SBL teams and yes they did beat one but
yeah. So I think
I
that.
right
hmm
PC versus controller, it's a big advantage, and
It is.
I don't
Yeah,
know if that's enough to say, hey, they're not competitive with anyone outside of their region because we don't really know right
that's
now.
true. That's a good point. I think that the main thing, though, I would honestly put Rival at number 2 or number 3 if they had Vaporish still. I think that's the
Right.
biggest deal. When I look at Rival from back then, um I would look at Fly, I would look at Rapio, and I would look at Vaporish. Now I'm only looking at Fly and Rapio. I think Davey, their new ADC, well, not new anymore, but he's been there for a while. But I don't think he's filled, the same spot Vaporish, did. Obviously, that's a lot to ask for, but it's still relevant. I think
Right.
that Predators has not been very strong for a long time. I think he's out of his prime 100%. I think that on a given day, maybe he can do what he was expected to do. Once upon a time, he had like a signature like Hercules and Cerberus, back in the day. But this this rival doesn't seem like the older rival because the older rival would not drop games, to anybody except for like Astral, which was hype back then. And that's just not really the case anymore. I think that Rival just hasn't looked like. I mean, they've obviously been dominant in Europe, but they had even at the last World Season 5, I believe they lost to Flashpoint, which was the team with Jumpa and Matt Koiz and all those guys, Delney too. Um, and it wasn't it was pretty convincing wins, for Flashpoint. So they haven't really looked dominant in a while now. Even in their own region, they're not the clear cut best team. I mean, they are, but they're not.
They are
They're
5-0.
yeah, they're still losing games though. That's not
I
old.
guess.
Yeah.
I guess so, but I still feel
Hmm.
like they're definitively the best in their region, and it's
Yeah,
a
they
region
are.
that has in the
Hmm.
past has been competitive. Maybe not recently,
Sure.
but in the past has been competitive with
Hmm.
the NA side of things. So I think I'm gonna have to put them in the number 3 spot above Big Money.
Hmm.
And I mean I
Yeah.
understand definitely understand what you're saying. You feel like they're on the downfall. You guys are on the
Hmm.
uprise. Maybe a little bit biased towards yourself, which I
Yeah. So
completely
I
understand.
can go into that a little
Yeah,
bit now.
you can
Yeah.
yeah.
So number 3, obviously, I put Big Money. Um, the main reason that I'm going to kind of put it here is this team hasn't been together for that long. I think Axiom and James have a lot of synergy because they used to play with each other. When I'm speaking of James, I mean Jelly. Everyone just calls him James. That's just his name.
Yeah.
Um, so Axiom and James, they didn't really team before a whole lot, but they always played ranked all the time for literal seasons. They play perfectly with each other. You know, there's there's no disputes ever with that. So they're working really well together. And Priv hadn't really played with those guys. The only person I played with on this team beforehand was Priv. When he was playing jungle too. And then I've never played with Bodilla. I think Priv played with Bodilla a little bit once upon a time. But generally speaking, as a team, we don't really have too much synergy. We don't have a coach. We're a very new team. I mean, I think this overall team has been together for 4.5, 5-ish weeks. But I joined 2.5 weeks ago or so. And I think for us to be doing super well without a coach, without, the amount of time everyone else has had, I think that you know, if we're already in such, a strong spot, I think that we can only get better. I don't really see us being in a position like Rival or Nemesis where it's arguable that they've gotten a little bit, worse over time just because they're not in their prime anymore. I mean,
Right.
it's obvious that, we're a newer team. We can definitely be inconsistent, but we still have a lot of room to grow and we're already at a really good spot, I would say. So I think
Yeah.
that we just have a lot of room to grow where these other teams I mean every team has room to grow, but it's a lot easier to, improve as a team from the beginning than, 2 years down the line.
All
Because
right.
everyone's still new, everyone's still getting synergy, but it's working out. So that's why I put
And
us at
without
number 3.
saying, I have Rival at number 3. We
Mhm.
kind of already touched on Rival a lot.
Yeah.
I just think they're a really strong team. I think that they're dominant, kind of dominant in the region. Obviously, they can lose games, and
Mhm.
I don't want to
Everyone
spend
can.
too
But
much
yeah,
more time on this because we have spent a lot of time on it. I think they're strong. I think they're a strong team, and I think that if
absolutely.
it's kind of hard for me
Mhm.
to put them lower. So
Yeah.
at number 2, this is
I
I
think
think a lot of
I think this is a
people would
lot
agree
closer
with this.
than I think this is a
I,
lot closer than people realize. These top
yeah,
2
I
teams.
do. I think these top 4 teams are closer
Yeah.
than people realize. Maybe I don't know.
Mhm.
Or and Blanche Fan Club is who I have. I believe that's who
Mhm.
you have
Yeah.
too, right?
Yep.
It's kind of hard to put them above Hype Unit, but
Mhm.
uh, who knows? Honestly, because Blanche Fan Club did take the win over Hype Unit 2-1 this last week, right?
Yeah.
And
To be fair though, they did
and
have a
have a
sub
coach.
on
Yeah,
hype
there's
for
right.
support, but even then I don't think in my opinion, I believe they won 2-1. I believe if they won, I don't think they would have I think if Bobby was there, I think Heat would have still, or not Heat, Blanche would have still won. I don't think that Visions and Bobby, I don't think it really matters. I feel like they both do the same thing,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
I
I'm
disagree
not
with you
sure, but
there. I think the fact that Hype Unit had a support's a very important role. Like
that's
yes,
true.
the
Hmm.
mechanics of support players in general are lower than the other classes. You can say most of the
Yeah,
time. That's not
most of the
always
time.
true.
I think
Support mains, please
Hamster
do
on
not
Blanche
come at my
is
throat.
an outlier. But yeah, I
Right.
agree.
There's several supports that are mechanically talented. But
Hmm.
in this case, I feel like um, some people might argue that Inbound and uh, is not like the most mechanically strong player. He does have good
Hmm.
mechanics.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, you also have to look at like the people he's surrounded by, though. Like, can
right.
you? Yeah,
And,
he's
and
not going to
and
be the
I
best
do think,
mechanical player in his team.
and I don't think it made like a huge difference. But when you're going up against like Blanche Fan Club, like
Yeah, that's true.
definitively the second best team,
Hmm.
and you don't have your
You
five-man
want to be in
roster
your
that you've
best
been
spot.
playing with
Yeah.
for a year, um, I think to lose 2-1 is like, to me, if it was a 2-0, I'd be like, okay, Blanche Fan Club, they would have won regardless.
Yeah. Okay,
But
that's a good
but
point.
the fact that it's a
Hmm.
2-1, I think that it does speak to a little bit. Like I feel like Hype Unit still has that edge, and then
Yeah, yeah, they do
Blanche
have
Fan,
that edge, but I
and
think
I
it's
believe
close. Yeah.
Blanche lost one other game this split, but
They did. Yeah, so they
yeah,
lost that set to Fatal Ambition with the subs, but even
right.
then, yeah, no, I agree. I think Hype Unit made a very interesting decision earlier in the phase. Griffin ended up leaving. I'm not exactly sure why he's playing in the XCL. I think it's a little strange that he's doing that, but I feel like he should have probably just stayed on Hype. But like, regardless, he
Well,
he ended
it's
up
it's
moving
about the
on.
time investment, right? Like he
That's
definitely
true.
left
Yeah,
for
yeah.
personal issues. He doesn't have to scrim to be the best player in the XCL. Like
No,
he
no,
is the
yeah, one
best
hundred
player
percent.
in the
That's a good
XCL,
point.
right?
Yeah,
And he
yeah, yeah.
doesn't have to scrim to do it.
Mm-hmm.
He's
And
just
he
gonna
doesn't
do
need to
that,
like show up, to the
right?
games, all
And
that stuff. That's a good
I
point.
think Hype Unit made it the best. Like, they picked up the best player for ADC
Yeah,
that
no,
they
so
with the
yeah, I was
options
about
they
to go
had.
into that. I think
But
this
before we
was,
do, because I don't
yeah.
want to get too far into Hype Unit, I want to stay on like
Mm-hmm.
Blanche Fan Club until we get to Hype Unit. But it's kind of hard
Okay.
because these are the top two teams, and it's kind of like we have to
These
talk
team,
about how
yeah.
they stack up against each other, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
because
but
yeah.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
think about how scary it would be for Hype Unit right now if Blanche Fan
Yeah.
Club didn't have the sub earlier in the year and took the loss to, well, who did they lose to?
They lose to Fatal Ambition. Yeah, that.
Fatal. If they didn't
Mm-hmm.
take that loss, the standings would be shaken up right
Tie.
now, and Hype
Yeah,
Unit
yeah.
would have to be
But
like,
even then,
yeah,
Hype Unit's not in a position where they can, kick back and relax yet.
they're not. But it'd
Yeah,
be
it
interesting
would be
if
very
Blanche
scary
Fan
for
Club
them.
didn't drop
Mm-hmm.
that set in the earlier there. And then again, it's just
Yeah.
like it's hard to argue that Blanche Fan Club would be above Hype Unit. Hype Unit has been in
Mm-hmm.
the number one team like for a long time. Blanche Fan Club has been the number two team for a
For a
very
long
long
time.
time,
Yeah.
and I think they're good. They're a really good team, and like if they were in a region, if they were in any other of these regions, if they were in literally any other region, like
Yeah, no,
any
one
other
hundred percent. They would
platform,
be the
like
one. They'd be the
PS4
best teams.
NA,
Yeah,
any of those, they would be the best team, and that's kind of why I had them at the second place
yeah. It's
here. Um,
disappointing that we'll never
and I
see them playing each other at LAN because I think that would be like really cool.
and
But
obviously losing
yeah,
Krim did hurt them. Like Krim
yeah.
is a good player.
That's what I was gonna go into. Mm-hmm.
Keeks is still a good player to replace Krim, but I don't think
Yeah,
that he's a Krim. I think he's good, and he did win with the technically like this roster's a lot different from from
yeah.
Myth Gaming, but
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
but he was on this former Myth Gaming roster when they won,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
So,
And I believe he got the MVP too. So
and
at the
there's one
time.
more thing. There is
Mm-hmm.
one more thing I want to add to what I have to say about Bland Fan Club. I think Delney, people are going to hate me for this opinion because it's
I'm
like
probably gonna agree. Actually,
Wolves. I think
yeah.
Delney might be on the
Downey's the
rise to be
best right now.
above.
I'm gonna be
I
honest. Yeah,
Yeah,
I can
I
see
think
it.
Wolves hasn't looked as dominant and like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very hard for me to say that Delny is just
Yeah.
flat out better than Wolves, but that's what
Mm-hmm.
it looks like to me right now. I don't know if
Yeah.
Wolves is getting complacent, if the meta's not matching with him, or like what's going on with Wolves. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if he just doesn't have the passion he used to,
I don't
but
know. So
it
yeah,
hasn't been that
well,
Wolves that could just
mm-hmm.
take over a game and run it by himself whenever he felt like it. It just
Yeah,
doesn't
I
feel like
agreed.
that anymore.
Mm-hmm. So I'll go into that in a minute. I just want to wrap up Blanche really quickly. I think that the player on this team, in my opinion, that makes this team so good is Hamster. Um, I think all the
I
people
agree.
are very strong. Delaney's super good. Janguru, super good. He's newer compared to everyone else on the team, but he's looked fantastic. I think Fatal Ghost has always just been consistently a top 2 or top 3 ADC. I don't think he's the playmaker, but he never does like bad. and that's important for a team like this where you have Dell and you have Jangru and you have Keegsmay who are gonna make those plays, so he doesn't need to make those plays.
Yeah.
And yeah, Hamster is in my eyes the most mechanically sound player, in the support role. I would say one of the best just in general. There's a lot of very strong mechanical players, but he's just really, really good. And I think that if Blanche had any other support, or really even anyone in any of those other spots, this team is just like really good as a unit and individually, and I think that's what makes them like so close to hype unit. Um, and that's why I don't think that Hype Unit has a free ride to Worlds. I think it's very possible that Blanche can take it over. I do think Hype Unit's going to end up coming in top, but there's a
Same.
possibility. Okay,
All right.
so yeah, we'll go
Let's
to Hype Unit now.
yep, let's go
Um,
into hype unit. Obviously, first place
yeah.
hype unit.
Mm-hmm.
There's not much that needs to be said
Mm-hmm.
here because
I
like
think
everyone
there's
knows
one
it. Like
important thing, but
there
yeah.
is one important thing. Um,
Mm-hmm. You want me to
and
go
I'll
into
let you
that?
go into that in a second.
Okay.
But I just think that before we go into like any negative points, that like this team is
Yeah.
the best. There is no arguing it.
Mm-hmm.
We could not argue that they are second place right now, even if we wanted to,
Yeah.
because it's basically factual at this point that they are the best console team. They performed the best at
I
LAN.
think it's fair to say that they're not. It's not like a blowout of them being the best by any means. I think Blanche is close, but
Right.
they're
Well,
still the
they're
best. They're
competitive.
still the
One
best.
other team is
Yeah, yeah.
competitive, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
and and they're still like the best team.
Yeah,
Like you
no,
can't argue
absolutely.
it.
There's
They've
no
been the best
shot.
team
Yeah.
for a very long time. You got a lot of players that I would consider to be the best in their role right now on like any platform. Like I
Mm-hmm.
feel like Layers is the best jungler out of anyone in the console league, all those leagues,
100%. Yeah,
and I
you can
feel
say that those players are all at the top of the roles individually and as a team.
right.
So
And they're all top three for sure in their role. Like I still feel like Wolves is top three as solo laners. May not
Wolves
be
is
the number
definitely
one.
top two. If he's not number
Yeah,
one, he's number two.
right. I'm
Yeah.
just saying top three in general.
Oh yeah, one hundred
I
percent.
think that Krim was a better mid laner than Baronic, but hey, Baronic still
Yeah.
is now that
Mm-hmm.
Krim is not a better like not a mid laner. Like he's
Yeah.
the best mid laner.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think
So
Krim.
that's a good point to bring up. I wanted to actually talk about that.
It's
So
no problem.
a long time ago, um, in the SPL, I remember there was a time where Energy had Dimmy, and this, you'll see how this factors in a moment. But Energy had Dimmy, and Dimmy, didn't. I think he just didn't really want to play anymore. So they moved Dimmy to coach, and then they picked up Maniac from Obey. And at the
Yeah,
time, Hype Unit or not Hype Unit, Energy was only competitive with Obey in all of Europe. So when they took away Maniac from Obey, you could argue that Energy didn't necessarily get better, but they took their competition away and they made their competition a hell of a lot worse. I think this is sort of the same situation that happened here. Griffin, for whatever reason, decided to step down, and instead of Hype Unit, maybe picking up, like they could have looked at like BM Bobby or Penn or even Fatal Ghost or somebody from the like PC, but they decided we're gonna take the best player from Blanche, at the time when they had
yeah.
Crimson, when it was Heat. So
Well,
we're going to
that's
take
I
their
think most
best
people would agree
player.
with that. The Blanche.
Hmm.
I mean, and I don't know. It is kind of like a
Yeah.
question mark. Like, why didn't you just take Ghost? But I mean,
I
I
think,
see it.
in my opinion, um, even though Ghost, I guess would have fit because he's an ADC, I think that Crimson's the player who, like, you can put him in any role and he's going to adapt to it better than anybody else on console. Another thing also, this just sort of happened to work for them. Crimson can still go to the mid lane and just play hunters, or he can go to the dual lane
Ooh,
and just play mages. So he's not in
he
any
fits this
means out
meta
of his
well,
comfort
actually.
zone. Yeah, this is perfect for him. Baronic, obviously fantastic. So even you could argue that with Crimson, Hype Unit didn't necessarily get better. I think they did get better, but even if you want to make the argument that them losing Griffin, picking up Crim, didn't make them better, I think they absolutely made their competition weaker. Even if not that
I
much,
think
because
they either
Keegsmace is
stayed the
strong.
same or got
Yeah, I
better in
think they
general.
stay
I
the
don't think they
same,
got any
but
worse.
they're that's true. I don't know. Keegsmace was like a kind of light in the dark. Yeah, I feel like if
Yeah.
they picked up anyone else, it would have been a lot worse. But I definitely think that Hype Unit made a very calculating pickup with that. And also, Crimson's just super good. Why would you not want to, get him if you can? He's
Right.
looked insane at ADC. I think Wolves has looked a little bit worse, but Wolves is still really good. He had a rough showing at the MSI. Hopefully, he can bring that around. So if they do make this next Worlds, he can kind of show everybody what he can do. But yeah, Hype Unit is still the best.
All right, guys, that's all of the power rankings for the Smite Console League, and I do want to say that this one is kind of in more like a serious podcast. We haven't had a guest, so it's kind of like, hey, we're just going into these power
Yeah.
rankings. Normally, we probably will have a guest, and it'll probably be more like a bit more funny. And this one's kind of just a bit more serious.
Yeah, so
Um,
we've just started.
and we kind of wanted to just do this one like between us because it's like we haven't done a podcast before. We're trying to like break the ice on that, and
Mhm.
hopefully you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Anything else?
if you have if anyone like wants to like see any topics being covered, it doesn't necessarily have to be console related. We can talk a little bit about SML and SPL. Maybe not like that's not what our series is going to be based around. But if there's something very interesting that you guys want us to talk about a little bit, I think we could look into that. We're new to this, so we're just looking for topics. We're not 100% sure how consistent this podcast is going to be. We're probably going to do it once every other week or so. It really just depends kind of on like, what's going on in the scene. But we'll be talking about everything in the SCL and stuff like that. We might talk about XCL a little bit, but generally we're going to be talking about competitive
Right.
console Smite.
And like it won't always be about one topic, right? Like if we bring
Yeah.
someone who like for
Mm-hmm.
example, two of the players that we're planning on bringing on eventually, Fallen and Teep, they want to come on and talk about the high tier uh, I guess you would call it Challenger Cup community and give their
Mm-hmm.
insight on that. And like we may not just talk about that. We may be like, go into the
Yeah.
topic of why Teep left Sanguine and what's going on there. And it
Mm-hmm.
won't like this one's specifically about power rankings, but it may not always
Yeah,
be
it
about
was
one
it was
topic.
just something we wanted to do. I think it sets like a good kind of standing because if we're going to be talking a lot about competitive, I think it's a good idea to have our opinions of where everyone is. So, next season we can look back, see how this stuff stacked up, see if this aged well or if it aged poorly. Me and Logical have slightly different opinions on some of the teams, but generally we are, pretty similar on, where we think people are going to place. I think though it's a good idea to do this first so we can kind of see where everything goes from now.
And also, I do want to add that this is going to be obviously you see this on YouTube. If there's another platform that you specifically listen to podcast on that you would like this to be uploaded to, like SoundCloud or something, let us know in the comments. Subscribe to the Classified YouTube channel. Thanks to them for letting them put it up there. They're going to promote it for us. So thanks for to Classified for letting that happen. And yeah, thanks guys. I'll see. Anything else you want to add?
No, that's just about it. Yeah, I'm really excited for this. We're gonna keep at it. We're gonna improve with these podcasts and the quality and just content.
Oh yeah, leave
Yeah.
criticism. We accept
Yes, please
criticism.
don't be mean,
I
but
know you could
yeah.
probably go back through this podcast and take a shot every time I said right while Shadows was
I
speaking,
said
and you
yeah, and I said
yeah
yeah a
or
lot.
yeah
Yeah.
yeah you could
We have
probably
we have
be
some bloopers we
wasted
could probably
by
add.
the.
We
Oh, dude,
this
we
wasn't
went through
cut.
the
This
intro
wasn't cut at
like
all. But
30
yeah.
times. Like, oh my
Ouch.
goodness.
Yeah, no,
But
it was something else. But we're
be
working at it.
give us
Hmm.
criticism, but be gentle, guys. Be gentle. It is our first podcast. We do want to improve at it, and we know we made some mistakes along the way. But yeah,
Hmm.
that's going to be it for this episode, guys. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.